So I've got to ask you, why are you sitting there listening to the radio when today's canoe races are about to start? I'll get Scott Phillips to describe today's events. Does anyone ever race in an Old Town Tripper?
People were racing an Old Town Tripper.
Because that's a tank.
Tripper's not a fast boat at all. It's good if you're going down the St. John or the Allagash with a week's worth of gear.
Then, later in the show, John Martin is known as Maine's longest-serving Speaker of the House. But how many people know that he's a registered Maine guide and owns a sporting camp? Well, all of Maine knows John Martin as the state's most beloved state legislator.
Yeah, believe that. You believe anything.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, a show about outdoor fun and adventure. And I've had this day circled in red on my calendar for months. The Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta means 5 days of whitewater events in canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards. The preliminaries started on Wednesday. For today's races, people are already lining the riverbank, mostly in Bradley at the side of the old Great Works Dam. The dams are gone, the river is free from Old Town to the sea, and the races are underway. Scott Phillips is the race director, and I'll grab him for a few minutes to open the show. Then we'll go north to Aroostook County and sample another traditional sporting camp west of Portage Lake. This one's on Fish River Lake, and it's been there for over a century. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Dysarts, EBS, and Supercuts in Bangor, Brewer, and Old Town. The Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta is a big deal. This is a national competition that has come to our area, and we get to watch it for free. You can get the exact schedule of today's racing events online at Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta.com. And if you can remember all that, congratulations. If not, just Google it. Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta.com. The sprint races are only a mile long, and the best place to watch is from the Bradley side. Park in the old baseball field and walk down to the river at Great Works. The other races are longer, and there are viewing points from Old Town to Eddington Bend. Headquarters for the event is on the river in Old Town, but there are other events too. The Penobscot Nation is hosting these races, and there will be many cultural activities staged around this race. So plan to make a whole day of it, and do not wait. Much of the activity happens this morning. There. That's enough info to get you started. Let's fill in the details with Scott Phillips. He's the race chair. Welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, Scott.
Thank you, Bob.
Penobscot River Whitewater National Regatta. I guess you got to have a big name for a big race.
Yeah. It's funny, it started out as the Whitewater Open Canoe Downriver Nationals, and we awarded that bid, and a couple things happened. One, there's a huge contingent of whitewater kayakers in Maine and New England or the Northeast, so we decided to bring them in, and then the stand-up paddleboards came in, and so it all kind of grew into this bigger event, so we had to rename it.
I didn't even know you could do stand-up paddleboards in whitewater.
Yeah, it's out west. It's pretty big, and it's
right?
Gaining more and more here in the east as well.
Yeah, but out west they don't have they just have big water, but not a lot of rocks.
There's been a few people in the Penobscot the last few years.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess I got to go again.
Yeah.
Well, describe for me the races and classes that people will be able to see.
Well, there's what we call downriver races and there's sprint races.
Right.
The downriver races, there'll be 3 days of that, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And that'll run from Old Town all the way to Eddington. And the sprint races are much shorter, and they'll be only in Bradley running just the Great Works Rapid. One boat at a time.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll be exciting.
Yeah, and that's just a sprint. There's no slalom course or anything like that.
That's just a sprint, as fast as you can get down through it. Yep.
And you must have different boat classes.
We have many different classes, like I said, canoe, kayak, stand-up paddleboard, wild water, but also, tandem, solos, mixed, junior, senior. There's also in canoe and kayak, there's different lengths of canoes and widths. So there's a racing class, which your boat can't be any narrower than 14% of its length. Then there's a recreational class that's a little bit wider, up to 16%.
Yeah.
So we break it down that way.
Does anyone ever race in an Old Town Tripper?
People were racing an Old Town Tripper.
Because that's a tank.
Tripper's not a fast boat at all. It's good if you're going down the St. John or the Allagash with a week's worth of gear.
Yeah, or carrying a Volkswagen in the stern. I mean, they can carry a lot. But
most people paddling Old Towns, they're racing the Old Town Penobscot series because they're much faster, rounder bottoms, made for speed.
Well, obviously I'm familiar with Great Works, and there's no place to park. What are you doing about parking for this whole race?
Actually, for Great Works, there is plenty of parking on the Bradley side.
Yeah.
On the Mill side, there is no access for the most part. But on the Bradley side, if you go up Broad Street, there's the old ball field, which was being mowed, and there'll be plenty of parking. Hundreds of cars can get in there.
Oh, all right. Oh, good.
And there's a number of access points there, and you can see the whole rapid from that shore.
And with the water levels we have right now, there's actually just a lot of beach and rocks to sit down and watch.
Yes, there is. Yes, there
For better
is.
or worse, there's a lot of beach. Where is the best place to watch, then, for all of these events? Because some of the events take place in different places.
Yeah. Well, the best place is that spot in Bradley because you can see Great Works, which is the most technical whitewater on the river. The other spots where you could watch would be down at Basin Mills in Orono. It's a little harder to get to that shoreline, but it can be done. There's some paths off of Mill Street that you can get down there. And then down in VZ, the VZ Rapid, where that dam was, there's now a park there that the trust built on the old powerhouse site, and you'll be able to view the VZ Rapid from there, which is just upstream of the finish line.
You know, I haven't looked at that rapid since they took the dam out. That's been, 2 years now?
It's not as challenging as Great Works as far as its technicality, but it's very wide and it has big waves.
Yeah. How much of the Great Works technicality is because of remnants of the old dam versus the original rapids?
Actually, none of it from the dam, because the contract to take the dam out was to take the dam right back to bedrock. So the dam's completely gone. Okay. There is a lot of industrial debris above, like boom piers and wing dams that were from the logging era that are still there. But it's easily navigable around that.
Yeah. When you looked at the river to decide how to set up these races, there are obviously different heavy waves. There's the rapids. There's ledges. How did you decide how to parse out where certain events were going to happen based on the actual river itself?
Well, it made sense to put in an Old Town because there's a lot of access there, a lot of parking. Old Town is the canoe city, so it made sense to start here. And then we just kind of look at the finish, how long you want the downriver race to be. And they're usually around an hour. This one's probably going to be a little bit longer than an hour to get to Eddington, especially with the current level. So we don't direct people, you can go one side of the river or the other. It's just get down the river as best you can. And then the sprint course, the ACA basically asked that we set a course that's no longer than a mile and pick the best whitewater on the course.
Yeah.
Originally, we thought about running from this park in Old Town all the way down to Great Works and through Great Works, which would have been about a mile and a third, which is pretty long. And again, given the current conditions, it would have been a lot of flat water in between, so it's not the best whitewater. So we made a decision last week to shorten that course and just start above the Great Works Rapid and run it. It's about 600 or 700 yards. Do
the racers put in at the Great Works Rapids at the start of the course, or do they put in Old Town and paddle down?
Well, they can put in Old Town and paddle down if they wish. I think most people are going to put in Bradley and just kind of carry their boat upstream to the starting line and then go from there.
How much practice are people doing before the race so they get familiar with the river?
Certainly the river's open. Anybody can practice whenever they want to. And there have been a lot of people on the river the last few weeks. Yeah.
Well, I saw the schedule that there were a number of organized practices for just local people who are familiar with each other and the river.
Yeah.
Do you have any control over the water levels? Because that's going to be the big question.
I wish I did.
Yeah.
I've talked to the power company, so we'll have to see. I mean, everybody's praying for rain right now because it's pretty low.
Well, if we need rain, I can just go camping. My guest is Scott Phillips. The Penobscot Nation is hosting the Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta today, and Scott is the chair. So I got to let him get back to work in a moment. But first, what is it about these nationals that make them national? Who determines where these national races go and who makes up the rules? That's up next as Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine continues on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. The Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta is happening right now. You can watch it from the banks of the river in Old Town, Bradley, VZ. Best bet is to park at the old ball field in Bradley and head down to the river at Great Works. It'll be obvious when you get there. Scott Phillips is my guest. He is the race chair. So I'm wondering, Scott, how is this a national race? Who does it?
This is sanctioned by the American Canoe Association. They're based out of Washington, D.C., and it's been an organization that's been in existence since the 1860s. But it's spread now to more than just canoe, even though that's its title. They also have sanctioned these kayak races and the stand-up paddleboard races. So it's sanctioned by them, and you have to have a sponsoring organization to put in the bid, and that was the Penobscot Indian Nation. The nation put on the first race last year on the river after the dams went out. It was called the Bichet Run, and we paddled from the top of Indian Island down to Old Town, portaged around the existing Milford Dam, and then paddled all the way to Brewer. That was a 15-miler, which is a couple hours.
Yeah.
But pretty exciting. It was great to paddle that, quote, new stretch of river that had opened up after we took the dams out. And for that race, it was kind of a commemoration of our ancestors paddling, my ancestors paddling down the Penobscot River. So I'm happy that we're doing it again.
Oh, I would think so, because for the Penobscot Nation, this particular section of the river is about as culturally significant as it gets.
Yes.
I mean, there were settlements up and down the river, especially where some of the dams came out. All the places are named for where fishing and resources were. It's just an incredibly important piece of the river for the nation. So to have this kind of national race on land that's cherished by the tribe, it's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, it feels great. We're very happy to have it, and the tribe's fully behind it. And, they'll also, during off times, during race days when we're not racing, there's going to be some cultural activities going on. There's a couple of different drum groups from Indian Island that will be performing in the park, and James Francis, who's a cultural director, will give a couple of different talks on some of the different aspects of the Penobscot culture. So.
Now, these are the nationals. Will they keep coming every year, or do you get a certain period of time where you can do it and then they rotate?
We're hoping it comes back another couple of years. The last few years, the ACA's protocol has been trying to keep it in the same spot for 3 years in a row. So as if this event goes off well, the paddlers like the course, the organization has done well, then hopefully it's going to come back for another 2 years after this.
Who's your competition? I mean, nationwide, where are other places attract this kind of race?
The last few years, it's been down to the Nantahala Outdoor Center in North Carolina. And they've got a great whitewater center down there, and the Nationals have been there many times. It's also been on the Youghiogheny River in Pennsylvania. It's been on the James River in Virginia. It's been in Maine many times on the Dead River, which is a terrific whitewater course. But it's very remote, and
it's not near anything.
It's not near anything. The Forks is the big town.
Yeah.
And for some people too that don't know the Dead, it's very intimidating because it's 12 miles of almost continuous whitewater.
Yeah.
The good thing about this new course, or the course that we're running this year from Old Town to Eddington, is it's accessible. We're near the towns. It's more urban, so there's more things for people to do. There's certainly better for spectators because there's more access points. There's not much access on the Dead to watch a race other than the very bottom. So it's going to be great. It's certainly great for the communities along the river. I've already seen a lot of activity picking up on the river. So those people are coming from out of town to practice, and of course they're spending money in town, and that's what we all want.
Exactly. I mean, for so long, when we were debating whether or not to pull out the dams in the first place, my philosophy has always been, we're only asking this big river to do one thing, and that's make power. We got to get back to asking it to do more things. That includes recreation, including this kind of competition, restore fisheries, all that stuff. The river can do a lot. We just weren't asking it to.
Yeah. And that reminds me, the Penobscot River Restoration Project was just such a huge win for everybody. The fisheries, of course, are coming back. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the alewives in Pushaw Lake, but I certainly haven't. They haven't been here for almost 2 centuries. So that's great. And I've been saying, for the last dozen years or so that, this is an economic engine to reopen the river so people will start using it again, whether it's paddling or whether it's fishing or just coming to view the river. There's a lot that's going to go on because of the dam removals.
Yeah, and the good fishery just above the dam in Milford. I mean, you've got different sections of the river that do different things, and finally we're able to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on putting the race together. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, thank you very much.
Scott Phillips, race chair of the Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta that is underway right now. Head on over to the river and watch the fun. And if you see a guy standing on the riverbank holding a big microphone, come on up and say hi to me. But for now, we switch gears. A couple of weeks ago, I headed up to Aroostook County to visit some sporting camps. My visit took me to Moose Point Camps on Fish River Lake, west of Portage Lake. Now, you may not know the camps, but you've certainly heard of the owner. John Martin was first elected to the Maine House of Representatives in 1964. He is the longest-serving legislator in Maine history, and he's still serving. He spent 2 decades as Speaker of the House, a record that will last forever in this era of term limits. As this part of the show begins, we're at one of the tables in the Maine Dining Lodge. We're looking out on the lake and looking out on history. Moose Point Camps have been there a long time. Well, John Martin, welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. That's where you say hi.
Great. Oh, pleased to be here.
Well, all of Maine knows John Martin as the state's most beloved state legislator.
Yeah, believe that. You believe anything.
How many people know you actually own a sporting camp, though?
Actually, not very many.
No.
There may be a few who've been here. A number of legislators have actually been here over the years. Mm-hmm. And there are very few people, even in this area. Most people don't come fishing here, even those in Aroostook County. This has got some of the best fishing there is in northern Maine, but there are lakes all over northern Maine.
That's just it.
And so they're next to a lake, so they don't need to come here. Mm-hmm. But this is really a great spot for people.
And this spot is Fish River Lake.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is the first lake in the Fish River chain of lakes. Mm-hmm. That ends up, they all dump into Eagle Lake.
Right. Well, the words John Martin and Eagle Lake almost always appear in the same sentence, but this isn't Eagle Lake. So how is it you ended up owning Moose Point Camps?
Well, it really is a long story to it in many ways, but when I was a kid, my uncle owned a sporting camps on Eagle Lake called Acadia, and so I used to mow lawns. Mm-hmm. Through grammar
before
school.
Power Motors.
Yeah, right. When I was in grammar school and high school. Mm-hmm. Then he sold the business, and I have often said, when I am close to retirement, I'm going to find a place to spend my retirement years. Mm-hmm. And so this became available. Actually, the irony about this, in many ways, is that it became available, went out to auction in '91 during shutdown.
Oh, is that right? State shut down, you bought a sporting camp.
No, I couldn't come up.
Oh, okay.
And so it got sold to someone else.
Oh, okay.
It got sold to, and I really was upset, but I couldn't fly up. There's nothing I could do. I couldn't leave the State House. Mm-hmm. And it got sold to a guy from Kentucky. And he came in, spent a lot of money. And lo and behold, his son had an accident in Jekyll Island, Georgia, in the water, and so he passed away, and so his widow wanted no parts of this place.
Right.
So it reverted back to people who had auctioned it off, and they called and I'd come in twice to see the place. Mm-hmm. So they called and they said, well, they had gotten a deposit, which they was forfeited, and they said, we'll let you have it at the same price that went out at auction. I said, sold.
John Martin is the voice you hear. Usually when he's on the radio, it's about something political in Augusta. Today, it's not. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is up in Aroostook County visiting old sporting camps. And this portion of today's show is just sitting around the dining table at Moose Point Camps. Most of the year, you'll find John in Augusta or at his home in Eagle Lake. In summer, he's usually right here watching the loons swim by. But where exactly is right here? Well, stand by. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. I am at Moose Point Camps. For about 24 years, it's been owned by none other than John Martin, who just happens to be the most famous legislator in Maine history. And for most of Maine history, these cabins have been right here. But where is here? And how old is old? Well, this is T13R8. Is that right?
That's correct. And the boundary is from there across to the outlet.
Is that right? What is the actual history of Moose Point Camps? How old is this?
The oldest cabin on site is cabin 10. It's now 101 years old. And so it's been here as a sporting camp, for a long time. And of course, it was here before there were roads, and they used to come up the river from Portage and go around the falls and come in. And this is where it was. And over the years, Ted Williams, if you look on the
Well, I did.
wall,
I looked in the wall. There's Ted Williams photos, which I assume were taken right here.
They were taken right here.
Yeah.
And they were actually also the Red Sox, and they were actually brought here by the Bangor-Aroostook Railroad. They would basically bring them up by train, by Pullman train, and then they would stay a week, and then back down they'd go to Boston. So that so it's been that type of history over the years.
So that cabin next to ours, we're in cabin 9. Cabin
Right.
10 is 101.
That's right.
See, it doesn't look a day over 90.
Yeah, exactly. And there are various types and places and years that they built them.
Yeah.
And then over the years, including my cabin burned, the one that you're next to right now, where your car is. And I had a group of college students who were going to spend the summer because they didn't want to go back to Lithuania for and so they were going to stay here. And I said, fine, you can stay. And they brought their clothing in on the cold, wet May day and put all their clothes around the stove.
Oh, no.
So I had a group of people from New Hampshire, Massachusetts. They were fishing, and they were firemen. And so I wasn't here. We had, so walking out, and one of the guys said, you got a light on in your cabin?
You smelled something burning?
We didn't see it.
No, yeah.
I said, no, there's nothing. Then he said, you got a fire. And we ran over, and sure enough. And so we were able to get very little out.
Because you're an awful long way from a fire engine.
Oh, forget it. Fire trucks showed up, and the camp was completely burnt.
Yeah.
And the view smoldered. We got to put it out. I said, come on.
Yeah, really?
No. So I let them. They left. About 4 o'clock in the morning, it started up again. I said, I'm not calling them. Because it means a lot less stuff I got to haul out of here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, as a matter of fact, I remember when we were doing some legislation about the unorganized territories, and the Greenville Fire Department always used to joke about First Roach Pond, saying we've never lost a cellar hole yet.
That's right.
If you're out here in the woods, it's all.
That's right.
It's gone.
But and I rebuilt, and it was really interesting because it was so close to the lake where that cabin was, and so Lurk came out, and I said, I want you to measure, put the point down where the front of the camp was, because that's where my camp is going.
Yep.
And of course, that's what we did.
Because you are the one who invented shoreland zoning.
Right, including Lurk.
Including Lurk.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I was right on point.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the history of this obviously is a sporting camp.
Yeah, always has been.
Was it mostly hunting, mostly fishing, both?
It was both. Yeah, it was both. It was never recreation. It was hunting and fishing. Yeah, as was that campsite over there. That used to be owned by a couple. That's an island, and they would spend fishing season here, and then they would go to the Allagash for hunting. So they had an operation there as well.
Yeah.
In the winter, they went to the Virgin Islands.
I want to live that life.
And they had an operation. It was 3 seasons, and they did all 3. I had a cousin who was guided for them for about 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think if I were coming here for a week of vacation, I would bring books, beer, and beans and never leave. I mean, this is the kind of place you would come to with the sole purpose of not doing anything else.
Right. Exactly.
It's absolute, total peace and recreation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just sitting there.
And we have people who come in and they fish, and they come back and sit there by the fireplace, make a fire, and read and do whatever.
Well, from the deck of cabin 9, I look around at the hills, and I don't see a single forested or a harvested tree. So what is it about the hills on the far side of Fish River Lake here that is protected from logging?
Actually, no. Is
that right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, tonight you'll hear them logging across the way, and you'll see the lights of the harvesters.
Can you see from here?
From here, you'll see them, but it shines through the, and they're about 100 feet away but you'll hear them depending. Well, actually, you will tonight. The wind's in the right direction. And last year they were harvesting on the backside And this hill has been harvested just 5 years ago.
Really? It looks fully forested.
Yeah, and they're really Irvings are very careful around lakes, and I mean that's one thing that they do. So that's been harvested, and I'm trying to think. That hasn't been yet, but it will be within a couple years. Yeah.
Well, Mother Nature spends every day of every year trying to turn log cabins to sawdust. So who's winning this battle, you or Mother Nature?
Well, I think so far I'm winning. You keep working at it, I'll tell you that much. When I purchased this place, they were all sitting on the ground, and so I'll be able to show you some of that, and they were rotting away.
Yeah.
So I decided the first thing I was going to do was raise them, and I hired Gary Pelletier, a retired game warden, who's now passed away a couple years ago, and he and a couple people came in, and we raised every single one of these. This one actually it now sits on cement foundation because there are actually about 7 buildings hooked into this particular building, and you come in the spring and it was like you'd spend 2 weeks leveling it off. So
you are taking me back to my childhood.
And I said,
I had that job.
Yeah, I said, forget it. Yeah. So I spent some money and put a foundation.
Yeah.
Across, I mean, not the whole thing, just about 7 feet deep, and that was it. But everyone else was raised, and cabin 4, the flush stayed on the ground. And cabin 10, the oldest one, the whole floor stayed on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all rotted. And so we went from cabin to cabin, and we did it over a 2-year period. This place wouldn't exist if we hadn't done that 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely right.
You know.
Yeah, my uncle used to do that for a living, and I worked for him for a summer, and man, did I hate that job.
I can understand. I didn't do the work, and I just helped them to get material, and I hated the job.
Oh, yeah. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm in the dining hall of Moose Point Camps, and the other voice you hear belongs to John Martin. John has owned this sporting camp since 1991. Maine used to have hundreds of sporting camps. Most are gone, but there are still quite a few up here in Aroostook County. So what makes this one special? Well, it might be the excellent fishing, it might be the lack of neighbors. John Martin gives his own answer next on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. We're in Aroostook County, west of Portage Lake on Fish River Lake. On the east side of the lake, there is a point of land that just juts out into the lake a little bit. From here, you can see most of Fish River Lake. The view is terrific, and this shallow area attracts fish, birds, and critters. My guest is the owner, John Martin, well-known state legislator, born and raised in northern Aroostook County. Well, there are sporting camps all over these lakes and ponds, so why is Moose Point special, do you think?
Well, I think it's accessibility. You're a half hour away from Route 11 from Portage.
Yep.
And it's easy access in. The logging road is in great shape.
Yeah.
And except for today with the mud.
All right, I got to ask you, why do you grade after it's rained so hard?
He graded yesterday.
Did he really? Oh.
And he said, I heard it's going to rain, but I don't think it's going to rain very much. And I said, well, it just said showers. Well, this morning we had a downpour.
Yeah, oh yeah.
and so you notice he left the grader right there.
I did notice.
And so I felt bad for him. But we woke up this morning, guests were leaving or packing or helping them out leave. And it was just pouring.
Oh, I know.
And so when I went out, I left here about 9 maybe. It was just miserable. I mean, I was all over the road. But I swear, every time I do get this road graded, it rains.
I mean, we could be having a drought, and whenever you grade it, rains. It was just so funny because we're coming in, and he's just churning up the mud. Yeah. And I'm thinking, this is not going to go well.
Yeah. Well, it was fine yesterday, but...
Well, July, is it usually busy or quiet?
Fairly busy. Yeah. And
well, it's not hunting and fishing, so who's here?
No, people, families. Yeah, and some left today, and then I've got more coming over the weekend, and then I'll fill up the last week and a half or so of July. Yeah.
Is it people who come back year after year traditionally?
Yeah, I would say 90% of my business is people who come, may skip a couple years or whatever, but most of it is, except during hunting. I mean, when I got this place, deer hunting was great.
Yeah.
But it fell to zero. And I used to stay open the first week of December.
Oh, really?
For muzzle loading.
Did you really? Mm-hmm.
But there's no after 5 years, forget it.
Yeah.
But the deer are really coming back. I mean, I can say I've seen more deer in the last 2 years than I've seen moose.
Well, moose are getting more clever.
Well, that's true.
We shot the dumb ones.
Yeah. Well, I saw 3 yesterday coming in.
Did you really?
Yeah. And going out this morning, saw 2.
Yeah.
But you're right. But this really was deer country. But it seems to be changing.
Well, you've had this place for 21 years. You've lived in the area, in the county, all your life.
Right.
So what are you seeing in terms of transition for wildlife? Are you seeing more bears, more moose, less deer?
More bear, more moose, less deer is that way to put it. And bear are just, they're just unbelievable.
I had one yesterday. We just right.
Yeah.
He stood up and looked at me, and I thought he'd run, and he didn't right away.
No. And we have. It's people say, "Oh yeah, we got a bear. We got a. They're dying off, and we don't have enough of them, and whatever."
Dead a lot more bear than there used to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember when I first ran for the legislature. The person.
This is the same year that Joshua Chamberlain was
right.
governor.
It was 1964, and one of my opponents ran because he wanted to reinstitute the fee on the hoof of the foot of bear that the state used to pay $5 for.
The bounty.
The bounty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he didn't get many votes, but.
Well, you say there was always a road here?
No,
there was no road.
There was
here.
no road.
No, okay.
The first thing that happened was the logging road came through.
Yeah, sure.
And then I want to say 40 years ago, Tom Pinkham built that mill, and he had a permit from Seven Islands to cut and harvest this township. And then at that point, the owner, Bill and Rose Mitchell, got him to build from where the wood pile is a road down here. So there's been a road to this location only 40 years.
A shout out to Seven Islands, by the way. When we crossed over on the road where it became Seven Islands Management, my wife and I looked at each other and said, "These guys know how to manage land."
Yeah,
they really do very good.
Yeah,
forestry.
They do a good job.
Yeah. Okay, when did the flush toilets arrive?
They're here, and I got here.
Is that right? So it was 91.
Oh yeah, I've replaced them, but that was all here. There were showers here as well. There was no well, but the water came out of the lake.
Yeah.
And pumped. They had a generator as well.
Yeah.
And they used the water from the lake at that point. Yeah.
Well, we're up in northern Aroostook County, so when does the ice go out? August?
Oh gosh.
When did it go out this year?
In middle May.
Yeah.
And when I did ice for the ice house in February, we had 34 inches of ice on the lake.
Yeah. I peeked into your ice house. I didn't know that you did that.
Yeah. When I first bought the previous owner, who had owned it like for 2-3 years before, after Bill and Rose Mitchell owned it for 25 years, destroyed it. And when I came in, my first year, people used to come visit and I owned the store in Eagle Lake, and I'd say, "Bring ice." Well, they bring ice, and of course, by the time in middle of July, I spent $3,000 on ice.
Oh, jeez!
By the time half would be gone.
Yeah.
Put it away, it'd be gone. So I said to a couple of friends of mine, I said, "We've really got to figure out a way to build an ice house." So I spent $3,000 building the ice house, and so then once a year we come in and we cut ice,
and you still do it,
and we still do it.
Yep.
And we have a fun party. We really have a party.
I would think so.
Yeah.
We
come in and.
Is there anybody here in the winter normally?
No.
Okay.
No. We come in and we come in the night before, heat up this place, my cabin, and many people want to sleep over. 8 o'clock we do breakfast. I cook the meal for breakfast, and then they start on the ice. and come on in. And and then after that, it takes them 3 hours or so. Mm-hmm. And I serve them a steak meal, and away they go. You know, that's my cost for cutting ice. So, and I don't have to give long time notice. I can say, hey, by the way, we're going to do ice, and I have the same 4 or 5 people, and everyone else wants to come see what it's like. So they all.
It's a party.
You know, it's a party time.
Well, what else are you going to do in winter? Ice fish.
It's really kind of fun to do. Well, of course, there's no ice fishing on this lake.
Well, okay, yeah.
That's why the fishing's good.
Did you do that?
No, but and so it's been, you know, we do it, and you know, you take a chainsaw, use a chainsaw, take the bar oil out of the chainsaw.
I was going to say that's going to make it a little strange.
Put in olive oil.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not olive oil.
Vegetable oil.
Vegetable oil.
Yeah.
Olive oil is too expensive.
Note to self: don't chainsaw with olive oil.
Yeah, and so then we cut the ice. And then after we're done, we go in, take the chainsaw, and make a hole to the rest of the ice, so the water comes back up.
Right.
Otherwise, you could have some real fatalities with snowmobiling.
Mm-hmm. John Martin is my guest on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. And I'm John's guest at Moose Point Camps on Fish River Lake up in Aroostook County. We're at the dining table. The sun is setting, and there is a question that has been bugging me ever since I got here this afternoon. There are chickens all over the yard. With all this wildlife around, how is it these chickens are still alive? And do moose get into the garden and eat the vegetables? Although it doesn't sound like it, this is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm at Moose Point Camps way up in Aroostook County on Fish River Lake. You may know John Martin for his half-century in the Maine State House, but you probably don't know that he's a registered Maine guide and owns this sporting camp. We're sitting at the dining table after I spent much of the afternoon sitting in the porch at cabin number 9. Well, while we were sitting out there, 4 eagles flew over a little while ago.
Yeah.
How is it you still have chickens?
Well, they keep flying around,
Yeah.
but they don't find the place to land. So the takeoff space is, they hate it like hell, though. They really get upset, and they'll go around and around. Yesterday, they had 2 eagles chasing one another.
The chickens do seem to be a little bit clever.
They are.
They look up, they see the eagles, they scurry under a bush or under my car.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and I haven't lost one yet.
Yeah.
Didn't lose any last year either. You know. So.
Well, I think life is difficult when you taste a little like chicken.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, but they'll dive into the lake. I'll see the eagles dive there, grab the dead fish, and go to the point and eat it, and then they'll keep flying. You know, and then this cat also plays games with the eagle.
The cat does? Yeah.
He'll go on the shore, run up and down the shore, and then he'll I don't know if he hears it, senses it, and he'll run on the dock on the deck over here. You got to wonder.
Messing with the eagles now, that's a pastime.
Yeah.
Well, you have a kitchen garden out there surrounded by fence. So what is most likely to eat it? Deer?
Deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not moose, not hares,
no.
Deer.
No, the moose, if they come in, they go right through the fence.
Yeah, that's not enough fence to keep a moose out.
No. I've only had that happen once.
Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bear, moose, deer, and birds. What gets hunted from here most?
I would say birds.
Yeah.
Pheasants. I'm sorry.
Grouse.
Grouse.
Yep.
I have 3 weeks of grouse season where I will be full. And then I have 2 weeks of bear that are really pretty heavy. And then I still have the same people who come up for deer, 4 or 5 of them. Maybe a party, you know, they'll come in and also come in for deer. But I say grouse, bear, in that order.
Yeah. I'm seeing so much of that in the woods. I think as the deer hunting has gone down, the grouse hunting has gone up.
Yeah. We have, going out this morning, probably saw 4 in that mud.
Yeah, of all things, because they don't like to come out in the mud much, but it's just a lot of grouse here.
Yeah.
Now, we already discussed this a little bit. What critters are increasing? What critters are decreasing? You see, fewer deer, plenty of moose and bear. Foxes, coyotes, how's that going?
Coyote is really down.
Yeah.
I mean, I have heard them only one night since I'm here this spring, and so I don't. I mean, obviously they're here, but they're not here in the number that they were when I came in 10, 15 years ago. You know, I used to sit here at dusk, and I could hear them in the hills, and making whatever.
Yeah. There are woodpecker holes all over the side of your new house. What went wrong?
I don't know. I felt like shooting them.
Yeah.
But pylon,
Pileated woodpeckers.
Woodpecker.
Yeah.
And during the winter, they just moved in.
I've never seen anything like that. I live in a log cabin on the lake. Every now and then a hairy woodpecker will peck in my house just to open a seed or something.
Okay.
But those guys are going into your wood, and I've never seen that.
No, it's unbelievable. They did that all in one winter.
Boy, that sucks to be you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and I tried putting stuff in the holes, and they pick that out and go, So I just gave up.
Yeah,
There's another wall behind it anyway.
Yeah.
So it didn't really matter, but it certainly makes it look kind of strange.
Well, it's tough when you get into a battle of wits with a woodpecker and lose.
Can't win that battle.
No.
And there are some smaller woodpeckers as well around. I haven't seen any last couple of days, but they're here.
So when people want to have a Moose Point Camps experience, what's the first step? Go online, look you up?
Go online, look you up. I'm in the phone book. So yeah, but people find, and of course, remember, it's word of mouth.
Yeah.
A lot of it is word of mouth. And so I'll get phone calls, and when I was out today, I had 2, 3.
You're in the situation where most people are, where there was this long tradition of the same families going back to the same camps year after year.
Yeah.
It was just an automatic renewal. You take the same week every year. That's changed in the vacation industry.
It has, yeah. And I think here, if you look at, I won't say 5 different owners, would probably account for 95 years of ownership. And a couple of people owned it for a couple of years, and that didn't work out, and whatever. Yeah, but they've been long term.
But the people just vacation differently than they used to.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You don't come here for a week and just sit around on the porch and read the way I might consider doing. People just want to do 1, 2, 3 days and then go.
Yeah, and the other thing, if they had their way, they'd drive the car into the building. That's one of the worst problems I have is please unload and go behind the fence. If you're spending a week here, well, we need to work we got to lock the car. I said, no, you have to lock the car. Well, what happens? I said, don't worry about it. And that's difficult for them to, they come from New York or wherever, for them to basically catch on to.
Speaking of which, should I go move my car?
No, you're just there for the night. That's my cabin, so no one's here tonight. If there were other guests, I'd say move it, but
Okay. So moosepointcamps.com.
moosepointcamps.com. Yep.
And all the contact information is on there.
Well, actually, it's being redone now. All they're going to get today is a picture. But that
and
should be done.
Lots of Latin.
Exactly. And that's being redone. I hope to have it done. Well, the guy who's doing it for me was supposed to have it done the first of the month, but that didn't happen. So I'm hoping that,
So what is your season now at Moose Point Camps?
May 10th. And now I close after the first week of deer season because there's no one else coming after that. Used to be, like I said, first week of December.
Yeah.
I will say now, in the last 3 years, we have people coming in for the last moose season in November. So that's made a change. And I'll keep as many cabins open for that I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you work with a certain set of registered Maine guides who come in here and do services for you?
No, I've got some Maine guides. I'm a Maine guide too. I'll do one, but I have 2 or 3 people I use all the time. And you really don't need a guide to be here to do fishing on this lake.
Yeah, they just basically jump in the boat.
And moose hunting, don't need a guide either.
Around here.
Just go check up the road.
Yeah, when I'm driving around here, I'm trying not to hit one with my car.
I had a guy who came up and I needed a guide. You don't need one. I need a guide. So he pays, $500 for the guide, coming down our camp road, first day, the moose standing there. He said, well, that $500 didn't do much good, did it? I said, I tried to tell you that, but you wouldn't believe me. I'm sure the guy was very happy because he would go home after one day because he had done his job.
Yep. Well, John Martin, thanks for being on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Pleased to do it, Bob. Thanks.
John Martin, Moose Point Camps on Fish River Lake in Aroostook County. From here, I'm heading up to Red River Camps, way up in the Tibuli Public Reserve lands. But you'll have to wait for that show. If all goes according to plan today, next weekend we'll recap some of the Penobscot River Whitewater Nationals Regatta that's going on right now. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and it's brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Dysarts, EBS, and Supercuts in Bangor, Brewer, and Old Town. Join me again every Saturday at 9, Sunday at 8, and online afterwards at 929theticket.com. This is Sports Radio, 929 The Ticket.